were in the majority for 4 years, there was not a shutdown, not one. The reason we're having a shutdown now is you and your leadership refuse to talk to Democrats and have any input and want only your imprimatur on the bill, which we believe hurts Americans badly.
Schumer has been adamant on this point. He keeps talking about the health care for he uses undocumented immigrants. We cannot afford to pay for health care for
illegals.
We just can't. I'm sorry. That's just something that I cannot abide.
Lindy Li roasted Chuck Schumer like a Boy Scout marshmallow at a bonfire, golden brown, flaming, and completely torched. Contrary to popular belief, the Senate doesn't have an embarrassment policy, but maybe it should, because what's happening to Schumer right now looks like a full-blown political meltdown in slow motion. What little was left of his dignity just got audited and repossessed. Lindy didn't just expose him, she unplugged his entire political Wi-Fi.
Chuck Schumer learned his lesson. He was on a book tour in March, and then he got shouted down by his liberal base. He is scared, dare I say it, shitless, that he's going to be primaried by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
So grab some popcorn, because this one's about to get messier than Congress after a catered lunch. Before we get into it, Seth, hit that subscribe button. Seriously, the support means more than you think. Now back to Schumer. He probably thought it was just another calm day in Washington, sign a few letters, hold a press conference, assure the world he's fighting for democracy. But then Lindy Li showed up like a political wrecking ball, fueled entirely by caffeine and Twitter fury, and everything changed.
I want to explain the motive behind all of this. Why is this happening now? Why is it happening when Democrats literally in March voted for the same exact piece of legislation, not once, not twice, but 13 times? They voted for this continuing resolution. Why are they shooting it down right now?
After what started as a harmless comment turned into a full-on digital beatdown, Schumer suddenly looked less like the Senate Majority Leader and more like a guy who just realized his intern has been live tweeting his private emails.
Such a fiscal conservative, like the hardcore, and I'm with you so much on the debt. Like, I want to hug you. I agree with you so much. I do want to say, though, on the Republicans wanting to shut down the government, I think a lot of them don't realize it actually costs us more to shut it down.
Yes.
You have to pay everyone back.
Yes.
And then you pay people overtime. You know, it actually ups the bill than had we not shut down in the first place.
I can't stand this.
It's just,
I've always been very careful when it comes to money, and honestly, I completely agree with you about the debt issue, but I wanted to give you a hug when you said that. But I think a lot of Republicans don't realize that shutting down the government actually ends up costing more than keeping it open and paying people as usual. In the long run, it's more expensive than if we hadn't shut it down at all. So your point really makes sense.
Earlier in the segment, if we don't recognize that America is shifting rightward, we are going to keep losing. If we don't have a financial accountability and some sort of very serious accounting of how exactly we spent $1 billion in 2 to 3 months, how are donors and even everyday Americans who gave their $10 and $25 ever going?
How can anyone trust political donors anymore, especially ordinary Americans who chip in $10 or $25, believing they're making a difference? If Chuck Schumer has mastered one thing, it's the art of pretending to fix problems while hosting lobbyists for a polite little tea party. He's the kind of man who could stand on a burning ship, straighten his tie, and calmly insist that everything's fine. But Lindy wasn't buying it. She came armed with receipts, conviction, and the kind of clarity that comes from years of watching politicians trip over their own talking points. With precision sharper than a Senate filibuster, she shredded every contradiction, delay, and "we'll handle it next term" excuse Schumer has used since the Bush era, turning his carefully rehearsed composure into a full-blown meme meltdown. Lindy Li didn't need a committee, a press conference, or a polished speechwriter. She just said what millions have been thinking for years, that Schumer has turned leadership into a confusing Olympic event. He's mastered the talent of saying everything while meaning nothing. And in this act of political ventriloquism, democracy itself is the dummy on his knee.
Democrats have chosen to essentially vote for a shutdown. Why? Because Republicans propose a clean, continuing resolution which basically maintains spending.
Schumer's signature move is always the same: form a committee, hold a meeting, and proudly announce that progress has been made toward possibly considering a future plan of action. It's like watching someone produce a 12-part Netflix documentary on the art of procrastination. Meanwhile, Lindy Li's over here launching verbal grenades and fact-check screenshots like it's Mythbusters Capitol Hill edition. She went straight for his selective outrage and how he only seems to turn on the cameras when it serves his political image. But the moment real accountability shows up, that passion vanishes faster than a stimulus check in the mail. The cable news anchors looked stunned, like kids watching their parents argue at the dinner table. Half of Schumer's supporters quietly slipped out the back, suddenly undecided, while the rest scrambled to defend him with long-winded essays about stability and experience.
I want to be very clear what this means in the grand scheme of things. Spending skyrocketed during the pandemic years. We were spending like drunken sailors. Spending money that we definitely did not have. Running up.
Schumer's response was the real showstopper. It landed somewhere between a dad joke at a funeral and a cry for help. His version of damage control? Reading a 12-page statement clearly drafted by a team of interns and somehow managing to sound like he's apologizing for simply existing. You almost have to admire how he can turn any crisis into an excuse for another committee meeting. Meanwhile, Lindy Li didn't slow down for a second. She turned political hypocrisy into a full-blown performance piece, exposing the gap between words and actions in under a minute. Then she cracked a joke so sharp you had to wonder if she moonlights as a stand-up comic. But beneath the laughs, Lindy struck a nerve. Hidden under the chaos was a hard truth. People are exhausted. They're tired of politicians who think public service means posing for magazine spreads while pretending to negotiate. They're tired of the endless bipartisan theater, the applause, the speeches, the promises, all masking the fact that nothing ever really changes.
We need a serious postmortem to show that we're learning the lessons, that we are exposing everything that went wrong, and that we are going to do better in the future. We can't just throw everything under the rug and assume that daddy's going to fill the piggy bank again.
Schumer operates like a political illusionist, a master of optics. He can spin any shaky situation into a headline that sounds like victory. Watching him work is like watching a magician pull the same rabbit out of the hat over and over, each time insisting it's a brand new trick. But Lindy Li doesn't play by the old Washington playbook. She represents the new wave, the kind fueled by social media savvy, armed with sarcasm, screenshots, and zero patience for political doublespeak. And that's exactly what made her takedown so devastating. It wasn't about protecting herself. It was about calling out decades of backroom deals, quiet compromises, and friendly negotiations that somehow always lead to the same ending. Everyone keeps their seat, and nothing truly changes. That's the real revelation here. Despite all the noise, Schumer's latest historic bipartisan agreement leaves us exactly where we started. When Lindy Li spoke up, it felt like someone had finally stepped off the endless political treadmill the rest of us have been forced to watch for years. And here's where the comedy really kicks in.
Out-left her and, in my opinion, out-socialist her in order to show the base that he's able to also be a strong progressive. And that is why we are in this discussion. We are in this situation because he is so scared for his...
Schumer's team scrambled to spin the story, firing off press releases, emails, and maybe even a few carrier pigeons, insisting everything had been taken out of context. But there was one tiny problem. Lindy had the receipts. Every screenshot, every audio clip, every photo of him smiling beside the same corporate donors he claims to despise. This wasn't just a PR blunder. It was hypocrisy caught under fluorescent lighting, live and undeniable. And it worked. People who'd long given up on politics couldn't help but laugh, shaking their heads as they said, wait, this guy's still running the show? Schumer had accidentally become the perfect mascot for everything broken in Washington. Too polished, too detached, and too afraid of anything real. He tried to play the experienced leader card, but Lindy flipped it with surgical precision. Experienced at what, exactly? The more Schumer talked, the clearer that answer became.
What are you doing? Talking about what happened in the campaign and absolutely putting a target on your head, let alone your back. Why would you do this?
If we don't confront reality, if we don't address these very serious issues, we're going to keep...
It was almost poetic, really. Schumer has always been the maestro of the middle ground, and a man so devoted to balance that he could turn even the smallest disagreement into a full-blown negotiation. But this time, there was no middle to find. On one side stood Schumer, clinging to his press release like a life raft. On the other, Lindy Li, wielding a flamethrower of facts. You could feel the shift. The focus wasn't on Schumer's policy anymore. It was on what he represented, the endless carousel of leaders who mistake motion for progress, the ones who celebrate symbolic victories while real problems stack up like unread mail. And the more Schumer tried to steer the narrative, the worse it got. He told everyone he was listening. The next day, there he was again, cycling through photo ops and recycled talking points. It was like watching someone try to reboot an old Windows computer. No matter how many times he hit refresh, the screen just froze. That's when it happened.
Millions of Americans who are homeless, who are suffering, we should be taking care of them first.
Including veterans.
There's nothing bigoted about wanting to care for Americans first. We have so many homeless encampments around the country.
Is that really the sticking point?
That is one of the major sticking points, that Chuck Schumer wants to expand healthcare coverage.
So I just want to understand, because I literally don't know.
I think that's a dumb political point to make too, because it's easy to argue again.
A movement sparked from the ashes of the Lindy takedown. They called it the Big Unmasking. It wasn't about tearing things down for the thrill of it. It was about accountability, exposing the way politics had turned into performance art. Lindy wasn't claiming to have all the answers. She was just saying what everyone was thinking. The audience deserves better actors. That was the irony Schumer never saw coming. For years, he'd worn the mantle of leadership as though applause itself were proof of purpose. But when the cheers turned into laughter, he froze. You could almost see him searching for the teleprompter, waiting for someone to cue the next line. This time, though, there was no script, just reality. In many ways, it was the perfect modern political parable. The old guard built their careers on control of message, of media, of narrative. But now, a single person with a smartphone and a sharp sense of humor could rewrite the entire script. One viral post unraveled decades of Schumer's choreography. The establishment tried to wave it off to pretend it was just another passing storm, but the impact rippled everywhere. TV hosts joked, analysts dissected Lindy's tone. Ordinary people simply nodded and said, finally, someone said it. Lindy hadn't just called out one man, she'd spotlighted a whole political culture sustained by silence.
This is the type of thing you've said about shutdowns in the past. Let's listen.
What if I persuaded my caucus to say I'm going to shut the government down? I'm going to not pay our bills unless I get my way. It's a politics of idiocy, of confrontation, of paralysis. Shutting down government over a policy difference is self-defeating. We can never hold American workers hostage again. While the CR bill is very bad, the potential for a shutdown has consequences for America.
And of course, Schumer tried to talk through it. He smiled, he waved, he carried on as if unbothered. But you could see it in his eyes, the unease of a man realizing that charisma and composure can't save you when the crowd's laughing at you, not with you. Every attempt to restore normalcy only made it worse. It was no longer politics as usual, it was theater, and Schumer had become the punchline in his own performance. The hilarious part is that he probably still believes that if he keeps preaching unity and bipartisanship, people will just forget. But the internet never forgets. Lindy Li didn't post and delete. She carved it into the digital record for every future voter to see. And maybe that's the real victory here. Not for Lindy herself, but for the idea that accountability can be bold, funny.
Were they telling your mom? And how soon was it? After the election? Like
a week or two.
When
it wasn't at that point. I was just asking questions. Like it wasn't even. I was like, what happened to the $2.5 billion we raised? Why did we spend it on Beyonce? Why did we spend 2.5? Why did we spend millions of dollars on Oprah? Like legitimate questions that needed to be answered. But the amount of hate I got for that was just overwhelming. And the final straw, the moment that I knew that I needed to leave, was actually around Christmas Eve, when the chair of the party, he's the biggest clown that the Democratic Party has ever, like honestly, in recent.
And gloriously unapologetic. That a new generation doesn't need titles or press passes to question power, just a backbone and Wi-Fi. Chuck Schumer can keep his office, keep giving speeches, keep smiling for the cameras, but he'll know. Every time he steps up to a microphone, he'll hear the faint echo of that digital explosion. Because once you're caught like this, the illusion doesn't come back. The shine dulls, the talking points lose their charm, and for once the crowd isn't clapping, they're watching, waiting, laughing. That's the beauty of it. Control used to be the essence of politics. Now it's a spectator sport with live commentary, and Lindy Li is one of the new referees. Unfiltered, underpaid, and utterly unstoppable. Even if Schumer still looks like he's at the helm, everyone can see the truth. Lindy just proved the iceberg has Wi-Fi and a sense of humor, while the captain's been asleep at the wheel. Honestly, it might be the most poetic ending Washington's ever written for itself.